So yeah, now for the fun part, or I guess it was all fun, I'm hoping. But let's go over this UFC. Man, this card, I'm not gonna say it's stacked top to bottom, but from the top, it's stacked, man. Like, this is as good as the 3 fights that you might ever see in your life. All right, so we're gonna start with Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. So Volkanovski, let me pull up the lines. Volkanovski is like minus 700, which is insane, but it's also justified because Volkanovski is, after the Ortega fight, like, we really learned like this man is for real. Like, Ortega had him in his patented 2 submissions. He had him in a guillotine and he had him in triangle. And this man would rather die than tap. He said he would like turn purple. He was making like weird sounds and groans, but this man is a warrior. And I mean, Korean Zombie is another warrior too. Like, this man has skill. Now, the reason why Volkanovski is minus 700 is because it's not really that Korean Zombie was the next title contender where it's like he earned it. It's just like Volkanovski's been running through the division. He's already fought Holloway twice. He was actually supposed to fight Holloway a 3rd time, but I think Holloway got an injury and he had to pull out. I mean, that would have been a great fight. And that's what kind of gets us to this line. It's like, if Volkanovski can win against Holloway decisions and volume and output, man, Korean Zombie is going to be in for a ride. Because Brian Ortega, the last person that fought Korean Zombie, or not the last person, but the last person who beat Korean Zombie, I think Zombie fought someone else after that. Someone like, okay. He fight Dan Ige, which, I mean, Dan Ige's pretty good, but I wouldn't say he's like top 5 level. But Ortega outvolumed Korean Zombie, and Volkanovski completely outvolumed Ortega. And Korean Zombie does have sick jiu-jitsu. Like, he has on his debut, he locked up a twister, which is just insane. I mean, I think there's like 3 twisters in the history of UFC. It's if you don't know what a twister is, look it up. It's really cool. It's pretty much they're like breaking your back in a almost like a hugging way. Definitely look it out or check it out. It's a really cool submission. I'm not even gonna try it yet. At some point though, I definitely do want to try throwing in twisters and stuff. But yeah, so my take on this fight is, if you were gonna bet this fight, I would bet under 4.5. Now, 100%, there's a chance that, and maybe even a good chance that it goes over 4.5 rounds. Now, minus 4.5, or sorry, over 4.5 is minus 140, which means it is the slight favorite. The reason I lean towards the under is, if Korean Zombie is going to win, there's no way he outvolumes Volkanovski. Volkanovski's outvoluming Holloway, Ortega, 2 people that could, I think, outvolume Korean Zombie. So if Korean Zombie is going to win, it's going to have to be by knockout. I don't think he's going to win some decision. It's going to have to be some submission or some like flash knockout. So that's going to cover Korean Zombie. And the other side, Zombie is very durable, but it is possible that he could get finished. He's a little bit older, but at the same time, let's not forget he spent, I think, 2-3 years in the military, so he was getting not the same kind of wear and tear as a UFC fighter. So his age is a little bit, I guess, inflated since he basically took 2-3 years off. But I think Volkanovski is going to recognize that this is a step down in competition and that he should really try to get a finish. And it's been a really long time since Volkanovski got a finished. He decisioned Aldo. He decisioned Holloway twice. He decisioned Ortega. I mean, the Ortega fight, he had Ortega on death's door. Like, the doctor could have stopped that probably round 5, round 4. I mean, both his eyes were purple. Ortega will not quit, though. Or like, that's one thing I'll give Ortega. Even Holloway had him like battered and bruised, but the doctor had to stop the fight. Ortega will go on a shield. It's the classic Mexican kind of soul, kind of warrior mentality. And as I'm not saying that Korean Zombie doesn't have that, but the only way Korean Zombie really wins is under 4.5, and I think there's a decent amount of chance that Volkanovski can also win under 4.5. So that's going to cover both fighters. I think if you want to hedge, I can see real quick, Volkanovski by decision. So Volkanovski by decision is minus 125. So you can't really hedge with that. So I mean, I think it was probably the 2 moves. But the reason I mean, like I said, I like the under because it covers both. It covers Korean Zombie winning, and it should cover a decent portion of Volkanovski winning too. All right, so the next fight, another banger, is going to be Aljamain Sterling versus Peter Yan. The rematch that we've all been waiting for, and Aljamain Sterling has been dreading since the last time they fought. So this one too. So Peter Yan is minus 475. Sterling's plus 350. Now, we're all pretty sure that Peter Yan should win this fight. The last fight between Yan and Sterling. The first 2 rounds are pretty close. I think Aljamain took him. And now Aljamain also pushed a crazy face. He gassed out. And I think around 4, and if it got to round 5, most likely Peter Yan was going to finish him. Like, he was beating him at his own game. He had like 7 takedowns, all from like trips and clinches. And Aljamain's the one who should be taking Peter Yan down. So Peter Yan is not going to be taken down. And if anything, he's going to take down Sterling. And man, he's gonna throw some hands. Now Peter Yan is a slow starter, and that's why once again it's over under 4.5. Because generally Peter Yan's gonna give up round 1. He's gonna just like calculate. He's a very like methodical, strategic, just classic Russian kind of fighter. He's just gonna gather information, compute, and then around the second half of round 2 is when he starts to push just up the pace. Round 3 he's gonna be really testing you. Round 4 and round 5 he's gonna be trying to break you. Now, some good news for the under 4.5 here is they've already fought. So Peter Yan can start a little bit faster because he's already spent 4 rounds with Aljamain. So he's already gathered a lot of information. So he can really try to push the pace, or he can at least start faster than he normally does. Now Aljamain, I think Aljamain I think is going to learn from his first fight, and he's not going to go so balls to the wall the first round or 2. I think he's going to try to really outpoint Peter Yan. He's going to try to win, I think, round 1. I'm not going to say barely for any of these, but he's not going to try to win by a lot. Like, he's not going to try to 10-8 Peter Yan. He's going to try to win the rounds. I wouldn't say like decisively, but just enough where the judges should think that he won the round. I think that's going to be a strategy for all 5 rounds. So, I mean, the problem with these fighters is it's really hard to, like, kind of bet them straight up. I mean, minus 475, minus 700. I mean, it's basically an over-under prop for these two. I mean, once again, do I want to lean under? I mean, I definitely have a bias towards unders. I always like unders. I mean, one thing I've noticed, though, is in championship fights, generally it goes over. But these guys do have a lot of bad blood. I know Peter Yan's trying to make a message or send a message. He's going to try to finish him at some point. But these guys are also trained killers, trained assassins, trained UFC fighters. They will take their time. Aljamain does not want to give up his belt. Nothing in the world would mean more to Aljamain than to win this fight, because he could be able to tell everyone, "I told you so." He would probably never fight Peter Yan again if he won. So yeah, I think that's kind of the take on this fight. One more kind of tidbit of information is Aljamain Sterling is completely ripped for this fight, like jacked, like 0% body fat, like 8-pack, the whole shebang. And I actually think this is a bad thing. My theory on this is Aljamain has had a huge chip on his shoulder. He's been making all these YouTube videos, and I think he's been focusing more on looking good than training for the fight. And if you see a lot of fighters, like, okay, there's exceptions, like Yoel Romero, some other just specimens that are just jacked beyond belief. But most fighters, like, they don't want to carry on a lot of muscle. They want to be lean. They want to be quick. They want to be efficient. And that's going to be Peter Yan. Like, he's not ripped. I mean, the dude's cut up. He's got like a 10-pack or whatever. But he's not going to carry a lot of muscle, and I think that's going to be the problem with Aljamain. With all that muscle that he's like showing off, that he's trying to like impress people, almost like he's overcompensating. That's going to make me think there's a chance he gasses later on in the fight. The more muscle you have, the more you're going to gas. It's like it takes more effort to carry on all that muscle. So with that keeping that in mind, I once again want to lean under 4.5. Like I said, I have this bias. I mean, if there was another fight, and maybe I'll find them later in the card, I will take overs. I will say I've made that change in the way I kind of like see these fights. Where if there's a chance it's over, or I think it's gonna be over, I'm just gonna take the over. I'm not gonna overthink it. But this one, since it's so even, it's -125 over, -105 under. Might as well go under, try to see some fun stuff happen. If it gets the decision, I'm not going to be surprised. I definitely wouldn't bet these over-unders heavy, but this is definitely my leans for these two fights. Now, the next one. Honestly, one of my favorite fighters right now. The man, I mean, he's the Wolf. He does not have any fear. Like, this is what I want to be. Like, just so fearless, so hardworking, so confident in my abilities. We have Khamzat Chimaev. Sorry, I should know that. I should know how to say that by now. Versus Gilbert Burns. So Khamzat is also -550, and Burns is +375. Now for this fight, I have actually a very interesting idea. So instead of betting Khamzat or Chimaev straight up, there's actually a betting, or not a betting site, but a stock site for fighters. Let me check what it's called real quick. I think it's called Precision Strike. So it's called, Prediction Strike. And just like you can invest stocks for like Google, Apple, and all these companies, you can actually invest stocks in these fighters. And I really want to put some money on Khamzat Chimaev, because I think at some point he could literally be triple champ. And he could do it with no fear, with no problem. He's literally just ran through everyone. And if he runs through Gilbert Burns, there's no one that's going to stop him. I mean, Usman would be the next best thing, and Usman is the best fighter in the world. Like, as much as I hate to say it, I think pound for pound, I think prefer John Jones, but you can definitely make a argument for saying that Usman is the greatest fighter in the world. And I wouldn't be surprised if Chimaev was a slight favorite, or it was like even money when they fight, if Chimaev can run through Burns. Now, Burns he's no joke. He's a top 5 fighter, very good. Honestly, a little bit inflated if you look at his wins. No one against someone like super active. He's beaten a lot of older fighters. He does have heavy hands, and he has sick jiu-jitsu. Like, his jiu-jitsu is 100% world class, and that would be my only concern with Chimaev, where he might get caught in some leg lock or some triangle. And I just don't think he would tap from it. Maybe some armbar, but Chimaev has sick jiu-jitsu too. I've watched a lot of videos of this guy. Now the over-under here, -130 or even money. Sorry, what am I saying? -130 over or under 1.5 is just even money. Now the way I would, on top of definitely invest Prediction Strike on Chimaev, I think that's a great idea. But Chimaev by KO is not bad. So he's -550, but sorry. Actually, so inside the distance is -130. But I don't think that he's gonna submit Gilbert Burns. I think Gilbert, unless he really rocks him, and Gilbert Burns is pretty much out on his feet, then okay, maybe he can get some rear naked choke or something, just because he basically gave up. It's just his way of finishing. But I think Chimaev by knockout, TKO, or disqualification at even money, I think that's probably the way to go. Is he going to get a decision? The guy's too good. And I don't think Gilbert Burns has the kind of chin, the kind of durability to really last 3 rounds with this monster. Unless Gilbert Burns is really pushing the pace. Second of all, is Gilbert Burns going to submit or beat Chimaev? No way. If he couldn't submit Wonder Boy when you're on top of him for 3 rounds, there's no way you submit Chimaev. Chimaev's going to be bigger, stronger, has better jiu-jitsu, has better grappling. The dude's just a monster. So you could take over. I would definitely take by knockout. If you want to bet with your heart, I would just take under and be like, yo, Chimaev, do it work. Because I don't think he's ever seen it past halfway through the second round. It's gotten the second round, I think maybe once, maybe twice. And he's finished them off pretty fast. And another thing with Chimaev is his significant strike to significant strikes taken ratio is just unheard of. 3-1 is good. 5-1 is good. 5-1 is good. This man is 112 significant strikes to 1 significant strike taken. That means for every 112 punches he gives, he's taken 1 punch. That is insane. And Burns is not the kind of guy that has the chin to outlast a monster like this. If Usman's jab could pretty much KO Burns, man, I don't like this guy can definitely do something. So for Chimaev, I would say by knockout, I would say invest in Chimaev stock. Because one day I would not be surprised if he beat Usman. He went up a division. I mean, could he beat Adesanya? I don't know. I really think it's possible. I mean, I think anything's possible with this guy. This guy is an animal. So I'm definitely gonna root for him. Now the other fights, Mackenzie Dern versus Tisha Torres. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of. It's basically, can Mackenzie Dern submit Tisha Torres, or is Tisha Torres going to win by decision? So if you want to bet this fight, let me look at the props real quick. I would say Tisha Torres by decision is plus 135, and Mackenzie Dern by submission, she's not going to knock her out, is plus 175. So if you want to bet one of those two, that would kind of be the way to go. Now, if Mackenzie does take her down, I think, or get her to the ground, she will win. I think her jiu-jitsu is that good where she can submit anyone. But she's not very good at takedowns. She's definitely learning. Her last fight against Marina Rodriguez, that was a big one, and I think she's learning that she needs to wrestle to be successful. Like, in the beginning, the girls kind of just went into her guard and obviously submitted them, but as she fights better people, like, they're going to know to stay away from the ground game. So for that one, I mean, you could take the over, but if you want, maybe take the over and hedge it with Mackenzie by submission. But it should be a decent fight to watch, nothing crazy. Ian Gary versus Darren Weeks. Basically, Gary is this other like British or Scottish fighter, a lot of hype behind him. Trains at Sanford, and he's minus 400, so another huge favorite. Now, this guy I think is the most sus of all the huge favorites. Even his last fight against Jordan Williams, he was getting touched up a little bit until he kind of just knocked Jordan Williams out. So I think he's hittable. Darren Weeks is, I think, a decent fighter from what I've heard. This might be actually his first fight in the UFC. He's been around for a sec. He's been fighting. He has some power. And it's over under 1.5, which I hate. If it was 2.5, then I would say okay, take the under, because either Gary's going to get hurt or I think Darren is going to get hurt, because Ian does have very good hands. Do I have a lean on this fight? If you really want to chase value, I would say put some money on Darren Weeks at plus 300. I do think he has a chance, and I think Ian Gary is going to be due a loss at some point. I don't know. I don't think he's quite good enough to be like Chimaev level, where he just runs through everyone, where I trust that he can go undefeated. Tybura versus Rosenstrike. I mean, this is just middle heavyweight. I mean, I would go Rosenstrike. I want to see how much Rosenstrike by KO is. Let's say, I mean, he's not going to submit him, so let's say straight by KO. I mean, minus 110. I mean, I don't like that line a lot. I mean, if you're going to bet Rosenstrike, he's not a big volume guy, so instead of betting minus 155, maybe you take minus 110. He could win a decision. These are heavyweights. I mean, this is kind of just like a messy fight. I would lean Rosenstrike. Tybura is good, but every time he takes a step up in competition, I mean, generally it doesn't go very well for him. So I would lean Rosenstrike, but I don't feel like super good about that one. Now, Gall versus Mike Malott. I heard Mike Malott's really good. Gall has kind of been raised in the UFC. He's been fighting for a really long time. I mean, if you want to put a stab on him, I don't mind. I mean, Mike Malott is minus 200. Once again, I'm not really going to touch this fight. Santos Arce. Arce's, I think, supposed to be pretty good, but he got destroyed by Song Yadong, which is not a bad thing, because Song Yadong, I think, is a straight up gangster. I think maybe the future, definitely top 5 of, I think, 135. Now, Vince Pichel versus Mark Madsen. That's one I kind of have some interest in. I like Pichel. I think Madsen's going to start really fast. He's going to hit the wrestling hard. But if Clay Guida can almost win a decision against Mark Madsen, I think Vince Pichel, from Hell is his nickname, is just a stronger, better grappling version of Clay Guida. So, I mean, minus 125, so you're not really getting much on it. Honestly, I would probably take the over. If you want to parlay the over, it's minus 200. I feel pretty good about that. I mean, these guys aren't really known for the finishes, and they both grapple a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was a big wrestling match and they both got kind of tired. and they kind of labored to the end, and then someone won a decision, probably split. I wouldn't be surprised if it was split, or it could be unanimous depending on how well I guess they get off with their wrestling, if they can really control all 3 rounds. But I really feel like Matson's going to start fast. Round 2 is going to be close, and Bichel's going to pick up 3, and then whoever the judges believe round 2 belong to is what it's going to come down to. Hansen versus Pierre Rodriguez, I don't know much about. I'm huge on fading Hansen. She's got a huge OnlyFans following. Not that I have anything against it. I just think that her focus isn't there. She lost her last fight to this girl, Jasmine Jadavusius, something like that, who literally just started MMA like 6 years ago. Now, if you're a professional fighter, you can't be losing to someone who started 6 years ago. Now, if it's heavyweight and it's Deontay Wilder or like Francis Ngannou, I understand where like the power is just there. But with girls, it comes to a lot of technique. It comes to a lot of jiu-jitsu. Now, I think Hansen's supposed to be a lot better at grappling, but I don't trust her. I would not trust her with money if I was going to bet. Now, Aspen Ladd versus Raquel Pennington. I mean, over is minus 325. I think makes a lot of sense. I mean, this one's going to be just 2 girls kind of like slowly clinching for 3 rounds. So if you want to, I don't know, like get dinner or something or take a break, I think Aspen Ladd versus Raquel Pennington is going to be the fight to do it. Now, Josh Ren versus Anthony Hernandez, I think it'll be a fun fight. That one, man, they gave us 1.5 again. If it was under 2.5, I would have taken it. Now, Anthony Hernandez puts a pace. This man, his nickname is Fluffy Hernandez. Super cool guy. Submitted Rodolfo Vieira, who is known as the Black Belt Hunter. So Hernandez is a very scrappy. He will fight for your dollar. So I wouldn't mind parlaying him at minus 200. Frem is supposed to be good though. He's not like a walkover. So this shouldn't be like a super easy fight. And the last one to kind of talk about, and I don't think it was in perfect order, but Jared Vanderaa versus Alexei Olenek. I heard Vanderaa is the value side. It's a very buy low on Vanderaa because he's coming off just some not so good performances. And Olenek is like 100 years old, has like 100 fights in the UFC. I mean, jiu-jitsu just wizard. I mean, he's called the boa constrictor. Like, if he gets his hands around you, you're toast. And Vanderaa, I mean, he's a black belt, but his defense on the ground is very sus. Which, like, sidebar, like, I think is very interesting because, like, he's a black belt, but he fights other black belts and they make it look easy. And that just shows the levels of this. Like, I can fight a blue belt and this guy's gonna kick my ass. Like, it's gonna be not even close. I mean, this man's a black belt. He would destroy the blue belt. He would destroy a purple belt, and he probably would beat a lot of black belts. But then he fights like a top black belt in the UFC, and he gets destroyed. So that kind of just shows the levels to UFC, to MMA that there are. It's like in basketball, like the worst player on the bench in basketball was the best player in college, and was also the best player in high school. Like, they were gods in high school. And in middle school, they were already dunking and stuff. But right now, just to show how much, like, the levels to it there are, like, they're now the worst person on the bench. Which, I mean, worst person in the NBA or, like, on the bench in the NBA is still, like, a very accomplishing thing, is what I'm trying to say by the levels to this. So, I mean, that's kind of a breakdown of all the fights. I mean, really, like, the top ones are the ones that are really, really fun. We might be sitting through some messy stuff. The first, like the early prelims, the prelim. But I'm telling you, once it gets to the main card, man, it's just fireworks. And I can't wait. Even Mackenzie Dern versus, what's her face? How do I forget her name? Felicia. No, not Felicia. Felicia. Tisha Torres. So even Mackenzie Dern versus Tisha Torres, I think should be a good fight. Hopefully we can get to the ground so I can see some cool jiu-jitsu. And that's going to be like the UFC kind of breakdown for UFC 273. Super excited, like I said. I'll probably post this separate. That way, if you just want to watch or just see what my takes on this UFC are, for sure, go for it.